Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here. I've just got back from Cheltenham today, had a really good 4 days there with my family, with my husband and my 2-year-old daughter Matilda and my father-in-law, and it was really great. Got to go to 4 talks, one from Margaret Atwood, who was amazing, such a wonderful speaker. She read from her book Mad Adam and also her new book The Stone Mattress, which is a collection of 9 short stories, which was really good. She read them really well and it really gave you an idea of the stories. She also talked a lot about her career and her life and her books, and one thing I found really interesting is that HBO have just picked up Mad Adam to make a TV series. It's going to be directed by the director of Black Swan, and when asked the question how, and I haven't read this series yet, so I don't know how much of a spoiler it is, but I believe there is a group of people within this trilogy ending in Mad Adam where I think it's Oryx and Crack and Year of the Flood and then Mad Adam, where their men's genitals glow blue when it's mating season. And she was asked the question, how are you going to cope with that with HBO? And she said HBO said to her, we're HBO, we're just going to do it. So that'll be interesting to see when that comes out. It was also really interesting to hear about her getting into writing. She's Canadian and I believe she grew up in the wilderness. She said for her 13th birthday, a lot of young girls were getting add-a-pearl necklaces where they got a pearl necklace which had 1 pearl on it, and every year they would add a pearl to the necklace until they had a complete necklace. And she was given a hunting knife. So you can tell the difference between the way she was brought up and possibly those that lived in the city. She loves the wilderness and she does talk about that in a lot of her books. She said she was looking at authors that had written things like 1984 and Brave New World, and they all have male protagonists, and she was really keen to write a story in the science fiction genre where it was a female protagonist, hence The Handmaid's Tale. I'm really pleased I went to see Margaret Atwood. I really love all of the books that I've read of hers, and I'm now looking forward to reading Oryx and Crack and Year of the Flood and Mad Adam. I've got all 3 on my Kindle, so I'm hoping to read these soon. The second talk I went to was called Teen Fiction, and it was hosted by the Sunday Times children's book editor, and along with her was her daughter, who is 21, but it was also one of the members of Spinebreaker's website, which unfortunately has recently shut down, and also Lucy Powrie, who is from Lucy the Reader, or many of you might know her blog Queen of Contemporary. She blogs about books and reading and talks a lot, mainly about YA fiction, but all types of books. She's 14 years old and I was just so impressed on the panel. She was poised, she was interesting, she really knows her stuff, and yeah, I was quite jealous. I wish I'd been like that at 14. They came up with some really good picks, and as an avid reader of anything including YA, and I'm totally unashamed to say that I like YA, I don't understand why we have to be ashamed about reading it. I think it's great. So they gave some really good recommendations. Some of Lucy's picks were Solitaire and We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Also discussed was Meg Rosoff and A Swift Pure Cry and The Traitor Game by B.R. Collins, which I haven't read and hadn't heard of, so I've since looked that up and I'm quite interested to read it, so that could be next on my list of books to buy. After that, I was lucky enough to attend a talk on how technology is changing our brains. Now, I thought this was quite an interesting concept, and as a house full of technology, both myself and my husband have iPads, we both have iPhones, he also has a BlackBerry for work. My daughter is constantly, even at 2, wanting to look at the iPad and is interested in technology. I was interested to see what the scientists had to say. One of the main panellists was Dame Susan Greenfield, who is is the UK's leading neuroscientist, and she was really very interesting, and for a layman like me who does find science and jargon quite difficult to understand, she really explained things well. One thing that I found interesting was that the psychologist, the child psychologist who was on the panel, was discussing how he's seeing a lot of children come in with addictions to things like gaming and social media, and how this can lead to depression. Susan Greenfield explained how when we get a reblog, a retweet, or somebody likes something of ours, often the brain releases a drug called dopamine, which gives us sort of an adrenaline or a high or a rush, and this is the same drug that's naturally produced when people take drugs. They were just discussing about how much is too much and how technology has changed and how the use of these devices for things like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are affecting how we live and how our brain works. I felt that the conversations that were being had were really interesting, and I would be interested to find out a little bit more. So Dame Susan Greenfield has just brought out a book, I believe, called Mind Change. So I'm going to have a look into that and possibly either borrow it from the library, or I might buy that if I can find that online. So watch this space. I might tell you a little bit more about what I find out and whether we should all be getting off YouTube now and doing something else. But I feel like I compensate because this is BookTube and I'm talking about books. So at some point I have to have not been on technology to have read my books. So I feel like I've got a good balance, or that's what I'm telling myself anyway. And then the last talk that I went to see was the Sunday Times Must Reads, and this was featuring two writers, Nathan Filer, who wrote The Shock of the Fall, and Emma Healy, who has written Elizabeth is Missing. Now, I have read The Shock of the Fall. I really enjoyed it. It's about Matthew, a boy who has schizophrenia, and his brother has died early in the book, and we follow his descent into his schizophrenia and his mental illness, and it follows his story. There's a little bit of a mystery in there. Nathan was a psychiatric nurse and has worked in psychiatric facilities, so he has an idea of how things work in there, and although he was very keen to point out that he doesn't base any of the people on people that he's ever worked with, he obviously knows the system. He knows, he said, the mouse mats in the offices of facilities have always been sponsored by drug companies, and that's in his book, and it was just interesting to hear him talk. As well, Emma and her book is about dementia. She has a history of dementia in her family, including her grandmother, and she was interested in writing from a perspective of her main protagonist, Maud, who has dementia, and interested in exploring the topic because it was something so close to her heart. I thought both of these writers were amazing to hear talk, and Emma is only 29 and has written a book that's been on the Sunday Times bestsellers list. Yeah, just really, really good, really interesting to hear these authors talk, and I'm interested and keen now to read Emma's book Elizabeth is Missing, so that might be one that I pick up in the future. Anyway, it was good to see you all. Bye for now, BookTube.